Welcome to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. I am your host, Rob Gauthier, the ET Whisperer. The Enlightenment Evolution Hour is a part of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Any ideas expressed by myself, a guest, or callers may not necessarily reflect the opinions of the network. Enlightenment defines the state of giving or receiving greater knowledge and understanding about a subject or situation. Evolution defines the gradual development of something, especially from a simple to a more complex form. What is Enlightenment Evolution? The state of giving or receiving greater knowledge as we develop from a simple to a more complex person, living on the earth for our soul's experience. Welcome and join me for our Enlightenment Evolution time together. Hello out there. How is everyone doing tonight? Welcome to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. Your host, Rob Gauthier. We have an extremely special guest today, a good friend of the show who has appeared not only here, but also been a part of our channel panel, the amazing Darryl Anka. Most of you in our community know him well, channeler of Bashar, but he is much more than just the channeler of Bashar. He's written many books. He's been involved in movie productions. He's been a part of movies making and script writing and videography and the works. All of this encompassment is just a part of the Darryl that you guys know about, and tonight we're going to get to know him better. But before we start, we do have some announcements. First of all, next week we do have, first of all, let's get to the first thing first. The very big announcement is that no longer we're running a bi-weekly schedule. Every week we're going to be doing the show 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 7 Pacific. And that's going to be from this point forward. The network itself, with all the other shows that are a part of our network, will be up and running soon. So you have more shows than just ours to pick up from. If you like this show, please go over to our Enlightenment Evolution Network YouTube channel, subscribe. We'll get the links up in the description soon. That way you can be a part of all the network that it is. I will always put my episodes up on my normal YouTube channel here at the ET Whisperer, but I'm going to be running it over there and simulcast. We're in talks right now with a few different radio networks. So that's a big thing. Next week, we're going to have Jim Charles from the Human Colonies, great friend of mine, channeler. Many of you guys in our community know who he is. He will be joining us next week. Amazing fellow. And we've got lots of guests that we're going to be lining up and announcing in the next week or two. If you're not a part of my Facebook or the Enlightenment Evolution Hour Facebook, you can go over there, get checked in, and keep up with all the announcements. I also like to share it on Twitter, but the most important social media place that we have right now is our Discord channel. The Discord channel is the only place where you can go and be in a part of our community without all of the extra social media stuff that tends to fall in line. We have a very beautiful community, a great admin, everything that you could need, ET Whisperer, channeler, metaphysical related, will be there at Discord. The link's in the description. I want to say, first of all, thank you guys for being here in the Enlightenment Evolution Hour, and we are so glad to be back. And we really want to thank our Patreon people for supporting this show. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to cut out the time of the week to do this. Our Patreon people are the ones who run the show and the ones who help us. So thank all of you from Patreon. It's an amazing thing. If you guys aren't familiar with our Patreon, we do 2 extra channelings a month. We have 2 different levels, the $11 and $22. That link is in the description. And everything else is going great. We have the channeling class coming up this weekend, and we also have our open forum this weekend. So if you haven't got your questions in for Trevor Ardip on the open forum, please make sure you go back to the video on this YouTube channel that says the open forum. Get your questions in. That tells you and shows you all the things that you need to know and how to get your questions asked and how to get them answered. I want to say thank you all for those of you in the chat. We got an active chat tonight. Wonderful. And can't wait to bring in our guests. So everybody, this guest in our community needs no introduction. All of you guys know Darryl. If you know what channeling is, and you know what ET channeling is, and you know what all the great things in our community, Darryl's been there for a long time, opening a lot of doors for a lot of people like myself, who, even though I've been in the community for 10 years, Darryl was there for 20 plus before me. So he's a wonderful guy. I want to bring him in right now, guys, so he can say hello to all of you. Welcome, Darryl. Thank you so much for being here tonight, brother. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Rob. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And, we talked a little bit about the show, about how your story has been told many times. You told it even on our last episode. If you can tell us kind of the experiences that brought you towards metaphysical interest, the thing that kind of got you into that door, the first time that you went to that channeling class, or when you started going to that channeling class where you had met Bashar and started channeling, like what kind of things were going on in your life, or interests that you had, or emotions that you were going through that kind of led you to that area?
Well, I mean, since I had the UFO sighting 10 years prior to that, uh, on two occasions there, I became fascinated, obviously, by the fact that these things were real. Because although obviously I'd heard about UFOs, when you actually physically see something like that, it changes everything. And so I had really spent the next 10 years doing a lot of research into different UFO things. There wasn't a lot back then. So I did, when I was looking for UFO information, I ran across other kinds of metaphysical works. Certainly, I became familiar with the Jane Roberts Seth material, because that was out there pretty prominently. So by the time I came across the channel who was conducting seminars, who eventually taught the class, I was pretty familiar with what channeling could be. I was still not myself focused on the idea of becoming a channel at all. I really only went into the class because I was just curious to see how something like that could be taught, because in reading a lot of other channel material, it just seemed like it was something that sort of just happened to people automatically out of the blue. So I was kind of curious to see how something like that could actually be taught, that somebody could learn something like that. Again, not thinking I was going to become a channel. But again, like I said, the guided meditations that the entity coming through that channel was giving were designed to get you in touch with, your deeper emotions, your higher mind, whatever you wanted to use that connection for. Didn't have to be that you were going to channel another entity. So, it was kind of surprising when in the meditative state, I received this telepathic link from Bashar, and immediately the information came flooding in a split second that I had made an agreement to do this with him. I understood that the UFO I had seen had been shown to me on purpose to get me to start doing the investigating I needed to do, so that by the time it came time to do the channeling, I would be somewhat familiar with it. I wouldn't be afraid of it. I would know that it was something that could have a positive effect. So, I went into it from there and allowed myself to continue to practice and was allowed to co-channel the next class with the teacher. And everything kind of evolved from there.
Well, that's beautiful. It's wonderful too. Something that you said brought up a lot of things for me. Your familiarity after you'd kind of gotten into the community, and something that was prominent when you had started going down that pathway. Just like you were a prominent figurehead when I first started, Jane Roberts was there for you. And I think Jane Roberts was one of the only really mainstream, huge channelers out there
Yes.
at that time. And there was a lot of synchronicities between yourself and the Seth material. And I even think Bashar had mentioned something about the Seth material being one of the most accurate, least filtered channelings that was out there before.
Yes.
Um, what have you ever had the opportunity to spend any time with either Jane Roberts or Robert Butts, or be around that house there
No,
in New York?
unfortunately, no, because they were on the East Coast, I was on the West Coast, and I think, by the time I really actually started getting into it, I don't know that she was still doing this. So I really only had the books to go by.
Okay, and that was something that was powerful itself. The reason I ask, we got to know someone. We actually met them at the first live channel panel that me and Kalina had done.
Mm.
We met a lady named Oshara, and we got to know her. And a couple years later, actually just a couple years ago, she had contacted myself and one of my friends, William, who had bumped into the Seth house completely on accident, but they restored the Seth house to its old capacity, and they're opening it up for people to go into publicly.
Yeah, I
um,
heard.
yeah, so that's an amazing thing, and that's a California person too. Well, Shar came from California. I'm pretty sure you probably bumped into her before over there. I know she was around the West Coast quite a bit on doing the event, so that's an amazing thing. But Seth material really changed me, because I had already met Treb by the time I had connected with that material. But when I read it, it was like the most clear things of what Treb was conversing to me, but
Hmm.
said in a much different terms. So it
Right.
was something that was beautiful. Do you remember the most compelling thing that you heard from Seth, or that you listened to when you first started checking that material out, that really hooked you in?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the basic premise that, we are the creators of our own reality was the main idea that I got from it. And then it was just about really exploring all the things, not only from Seth, but from Bashar, about how that actually happened. So that principle was really the thing that stuck with me. We weren't just having things happen to us, but they were basically happening through us based on our belief systems and so on and so forth. So that was something that was really eye-opening for me.
And what I've noticed personally in channeling, Jane Roberts and Seth, like I said, in my mind, some of the most profound, by far my favorite channeler
Mhm.
was Jane Roberts and the Seth material. But I think it was also, as complex as it was basic enough for people to understand. And then we get into channeling today, and we
Mhm.
see people like yourself. I consider my own channeling pretty decent, and those channelings tend to bring more elements of that information to a more complex head, but also keeping it simple enough for people to understand. Have you ever thought about why that is? Why the information has just become so much more intense in the last 5 or 10 years than it was ever before?
Well, a couple of reasons. I mean, I think we do understand a little bit more. There are now people that are more interested in exploring those concepts more deeply, and therefore the entities can go into them more deeply. But I also think we're kind of approaching the end of a cycle, and we kind of really need a major download of this information for those that are willing to apply it in their lives, because it's very important now to become living examples of this information and help the world shift in more positive ways. So I think there's a timing element to it and an evolutionary element to it, in the sense that people are a little bit more open to this. They're a little more familiar with some of these concepts, whether they're metaphysical or whether it's physics, because a lot of cutting edge quantum physics is now, I know a lot of physicists don't like to hear this, but I believe that a lot of cutting edge quantum physics is starting to sound a lot like the things that have been said in metaphysics and spirituality for quite a long time, thousands of years. And I think that eventually the two things will, in some way, shape, or form, find some common ground, and find that there actually can be, from the scientific point of view, equations to understand these things that are happening in metaphysics that right now we don't really have equations for. I do think that at some point they will be able to merge. So, I think this is a culmination of our evolutionary path, that this information is part and parcel of where we're going as a species. So I think this is just a matter of, it's the right time for this to get much deeper and much clearer.
Yeah, I really think, in my own personal journey, I started, around 20, 2009, 2010. And I noticed a big increase in our community come up in the 2012. And then I noticed a lot of the kind of edge fringe channeling ended up telling people, hey, you know, we got UFOs that are coming to land
Mhm.
on December 21st. It's going to happen. And the disappointment that came from so many people, it was like a mass exodus out of the channeling community itself. But I've noticed the resurgence of that in the last 4 or 5 years. Channeling has become back up to the main component of the forefront of our community, whereas before it was kind of a side niche pocket of the metaphysics community in general. Do you think that's the same reason, just because people are now more ready for that information?
I do. And, in terms of things like, predicting when UFOs are going to land, a lot of times people that might be sensitive and picking up on those things, they're not always, um, let's say, aligned with the time frame. Time is a slippery thing. So someone may get a really strong feeling that something's going to happen, and they may simply assume that it might happen sooner than it actually is going to happen, because there's all sorts of other factors that come in terms of when people are ready for this and ready for that. So it may feel like to the people that pick up on the fact that the ETs are kind of contacting us and so on and so forth, it may feel like it's imminent. But I think that there's another factor that everyone has to consider, and that is that more people have to be ready, not just the people that are initially picking up on that, but the more of the general public has to get used to that idea. And we just saw on last Tuesday that the very first time an actual public congressional subcommittee actually admitting that these things are real. They don't know what they are. They're not admitting that, but they are saying it's a serious subject for the first time publicly. And that's, not necessarily from our point of view, but from the public's point of view, that's a big step in the direction of opening up to the idea of what UFOs and UAPs actually are, and being willing to explore them and not necessarily dismiss or ridicule the people that report these things. So from our point of view in our society, that's a big step. And I think it's right in time with the idea that more and more people are now okay opening up to this kind of material without being afraid to discuss it.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think I was going to mention too, with the Congress finally stepping in and saying, yes, these things exist. That
Mhm.
was a huge step up for us in in
Yeah,
this community. We're like, yeah, we we knew that a long time ago, but
yeah,
it's good to
exactly.
see at least the public receiving it, you know?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And it's a beautiful thing. I know a lot of people are kind of in the air with a lot of what any government shares, just because governments are what they are, and people don't like them or love them. But I think it's beautiful that the energy is there for the collective. And that's something that I was going to say too. You know um the channelings that I was talking about that were coming out were more like, hey, not focused on self-empowerment or self-creation, but hey, we are these entities, and we're coming for sure.
Yeah.
Whereas when you hear Bashar talk about something, or any of the other channelers that last and that have remained throughout, always explain, contact is a self-made thing.
Hmm.
If you want disclosure, go inside and get it self-disclosed first, and then kind of go out. And I think that's where a lot of people in our community have the biggest problem. The biggest thing I notice as a channeler, and as someone who talks to people a lot about this stuff, is that most people just want physical contact, and they're disappointed because that element isn't made in their experience. Yet other people who kind of accepted, hey, it's either going to happen or not going to happen, can I create it or not, tend to have
Hmm.
beautiful luck with the CE5s and stuff.
Right.
Have you noticed the most successful mindset for physical contact? Because that's what most people are really interested in getting to.
Yeah. Well, yes, and I'll address that in a second. One of the things I wanted to go back and say is, if this had been left up to the government, it might not have happened. But remember that the reason that this public hearing did happen is because it's being driven by a lot of people in the UFO community and in our communities. People like Stephen Bassett and things like that have been pushing for this for a long time, and really getting people in the government used to the idea that it's okay to discuss these things. So even though people may not trust the government in many cases, you have to realize that it's not the government that is driving this to come into the public recognition. The government is finally accepting that this is something that can be discussed, but it wasn't necessarily initiated by them. Um, the other thing in terms of the mindset, I think people have to just be open to allowing the timing to be what it is. Because remember, it's not just about what we want, it's also about what works for the ETs. Like Bashar says, he's a first contact specialist and he's done this many times with different civilizations. They're practiced at this. They know what they're doing. They've studied our civilization, they've studied our species, they've studied our cultures. They understand that even though many people may think they're ready, this is a very, very big difference, a very big change happening here. And it covers many more things than just what one or two people might feel they're ready for. So they're taking their time. They're making sure that everything is being done correctly. They have to respect our energy, our willingness to open up to different things. And they know the timing is the timing that it needs to be. So I think the best mindset that people can have is to kind of be open to it, be excited about it, but relax the insistence on exactly when you think it should happen, because the beings that are actually helping it happen know exactly what the timing needs to be. And we kind of just have to trust that.
All right, and that's something too that really kind of drives home for me too. A lot of people with inner contact, meditation contact, one of the things that I've had to share with a lot of people is a lot of people think that they want the experience, but don't realize all that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
The experience itself is life altering. As soon as I started channeling, 2 years later, I'm in the middle of a divorce. I'm leaving to move in to another place in the region. My family thought I was nuts for a while. I mean,
Sure,
everything changed, right?
sure. Absolutely. And, when people channel, a lot of times people just assume, well, it's coming through the channel to us and, asking us to work on ourselves. But the channel has to work on themselves too. It's very important for the channel to go through all the different belief systems and emotions within themselves and thoughts within themselves to become a clearer and clearer channel and be more representative of the vibrational frequency that might be more conducive to open contact. So, it's not just a matter in general of, a hard spaceship landing and an alien getting out. People have to really understand how different a lot of ETs are from us and how they exist on a very different psychological, dimensional, spiritual level, the ones that are contacting us, than we're familiar with. And it really does take some time to get used to this. I mean, I've been channeling Bashar now going on 39 years. And, I still go through different processes that help make me more aligned and be able to use his information, in a much more clear way and get the results of the changes in my life. But the changes in my life are profound when they happen based on that use of that information. And I think people just sort of get this idea that it's, just like a sci-fi movie where they land and they come out and everyone goes, hey, that's nice, and we're going to have a good time and you're going to help us do some amazing things. It's really all starts with us changing ourselves in a way that really makes it clear that we have things to let go of, and that their vibration, the aliens' vibration, is so much different than ours, that if we don't allow ourselves to adapt to it through a process, as Bashar says, one of the reasons they remain sort of at arm's length is because full exposure to their frequency could actually put us into psychic shock. So I think that we think we're ready, but there have been 3 occasions when people in the public events that Bashar does have told him, okay, I'm ready to meet you, say when and where and I'll be there. And there have been 3 occasions when he said, all right, let's see if that's true. And when he told the people where to be and when to be there, in each case, every single time that they sensed he was approaching or saw the ship approaching, they ran like scared rabbits. It's a reaction to the energy that our primitive brain, the part of our brain that goes into survival mode, just reacts to. It's not something we're used to. It's almost like our physical mind thinks that the exposure to that kind of energy is almost tantamount to dying, because we're shifting so strongly into a different dimension, a different reality, that the physical mind actually translates that as annihilation. It doesn't have the concept that it'll actually survive. So, Bashar and the ETs that are connecting to us and are helping us change, they know what they're doing, and they're doing it in a way that they know will be the least harmful way for our psychology to be able to handle. So again, I think we really have to trust that they know what they're doing, and that it will happen in the timing that it needs to happen. But it's about us taking the responsibility for the things that we need to change within ourselves that's going to accelerate it.
And that's always kind of the case. And in my experience, it's the self-connected part of yourself that brings the experience anyway. If we're all creating our own reality and then co-creating with other beings, the first thing we have to shift is ourself. And the experience of feeling so strong of a connection and such a high psychic level that it's tantamount to death. Do you suppose that that's why a lot of people who've either said that they've been abducted or claimed a contact of a negative sense, do you think that's what they're feeling, or do you think they genuinely connected to some beings who might not have the greatest intention?
No, I think it's mostly our reaction, because I've read many reports also of abductions where they start out terrified and start out believing that it's something nefarious. And over the process of the different times that they get encounters that way, they start to understand that they actually have the ability to kind of request that it happen more on their terms. They start understanding what the overall agreements are they made for the evolution of the earth with regard to that. And they start actually having a more positive experience. So in my own understanding and my research, it's more our negative reaction based on our fear-based beliefs that starts that ball rolling down the negative path. But eventually those that are open to it seem to be able to change it into a much more positive experience for themselves, because they have been willing to open up and clear out their own fear-based beliefs that are the things that are, for the most part, causing the negative experience for themselves. Now, that doesn't mean that, especially with the gray beings that are mostly talked about in abduction experiences, it doesn't necessarily mean that they can relate to us emotionally. But I think it's just a matter of them not understanding what it is we feel, because they just don't feel the same way we do, those particular beings. And so I think it comes across as cold, it comes across as malevolent, but I don't think for the most part it actually is.
I see. And this is something that Art and Trev have talked about in my own channel, and that there does exist malevolent entities in the universe, as the universe has duality in it. But
Sure.
a good chunk of the beings who are kind of connecting with humans have a best intention, whether it's from their own perspective or from an actual perspective of human desire to create with them in that higher level of consciousness. And I think a lot of them have genetic ancestry to ourselves, or some kind of emotional, energetic connection.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask about the trauma too, something that's come through in my own channeling, is that although we're souls in a body, our bodies descend from relatives, and our relatives have held trauma. And even though their trauma is not ours, DNA holds a level of epigenetics, and some of that DNA that passes on also can pass on reactions towards ETs just from bad experiences, like during the Indian extraterrestrial wars in India, that they've written all the text from. And I'm trying to think of the name. I'll butcher it anyway, but all of the Hindu religions have created.
The Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, thank you. So these
Mahabharata.
people who lived there in that time and went through that trauma, do you think some of them passed on epigenetically, at least through the DNA or through the physical aspect, some of that?
In some senses, yes, but Bashar would probably say it doesn't have to be that way because, again, it's mostly about the way we're trained to think about physical reality and the way we're trained to think about how things get, quote unquote, passed on genetically, because basically we're creating our reality every single moment. So those things can be disconnected. Those things can get into a place where they don't affect us because we have a different idea of who we are in the moment. So on one hand, yes, it's possible because we've been trained to think that it's possible. On the other hand, I think you can completely break from that continuity if you understand the concept of how we create our reality more fully.
Well, that makes sense too. Even in self-creation mode, people who come from parents who are drug addicts or gamblers or alcoholics, they can come and never touch the stuff and fully succeed and go through. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What now? I have heard things in our community too, especially in the last few months, about people having experiences where they were really connecting with ET guides, hybrid children, things like that, and then they had a negative experience, something to that effect. And the question that I've gotten is, how do you break that contract if you don't want to co-create with these beings anymore, whether it's a self fear or whether it's something else going on? How do you break it? Do you just say, I don't want to create that experience anymore because it's too traumatic?
Well, again, I think it's an opportunity to look at our own belief systems and find out why it seemed traumatic. That's part of the agreement in a way. So I think one has to be really honest with oneself about why that experience happened the way it does. I'm not in any way, shape, or form excusing other beings that may have done something that wasn't necessarily pleasant. But I also really understand that you have to take this on a case by case basis. I don't know that you can, quote unquote, break a contract in that way. I do know that you can mitigate the way you experience it by allowing yourself to know that you can be in control, that you can ask and request that the experiences happen on your own terms in a comfortable way. So one has to remember that one starts exploring and expanding one's consciousness. Things that may have been very deeply buried in your belief system will come to the surface eventually. And it may be those moments that's causing what seems to be the trauma. And it may be being, in a sense, or appear to be being reflected by the ETs you're encountering. But in my understanding, they're just basically bringing to your attention that you have these things within you. And it's important that you deal with them and let them go so that you can actually go on to have a more positive experience with them. In my experience, I don't think it's something that's happening from the ETs. I think it's something that's happening within the humans.
Yeah, well, to make a comparison, when you're dealing with the problem family member or friend, and you have a repetitive cycle of whatever bad relationship might be happening, that relationship continues to go sour over and over and over again until you either deviate or change the dynamic. The same goes with lessons that we need to learn as a soul. You go into an experience and say, hey, I want to create abundance. And if you are doing it incorrectly, you're going to keep going to those pitfalls that help show you a pathway. So that does make a lot of sense. And I appreciate that, because that's been a big topic of conversation for a lot of people, for sure. Another thing I wanted to ask too, one of the biggest things I get is how to channel. Now I know that there are like Sean Randall, a dear friend of yours.
Yes.
He teaches channeling. I teach channeling. You teach channeling. Daniel Scranton teaches channeling. There's a few
I
people.
I do not teach channeling.
Oh, you're not teaching channel. Okay.
No.
Was it Bashar once that did a class for that,
He
or
did
was?
one class a long time ago, but that's not something that he does right now.
I see. Beautiful. Okay. Is there something you can give people as a hint or a clue to
Yes.
help them get past that?
Well, the first thing to understand is that channeling doesn't mean you have to channel another entity. Channeling is a state in the brain, as we discussed in the documentary we did, First Contact, where you are operating in the gamma state between 40 and 100 cycles per second in the brain. The idea of doing what you love to do, being in the zone, puts you in a channeling state, which means you're simply accessing more information, more creativity, you're synthesizing information and processing it in a much more accelerated and connected way. So it's channeling is a natural thing we all do. It's just a matter of what you do with it when you're in that state. Even deep states of meditation can actually put you in the gamma state, and in that sense, it's a form of channeling. But the idea of doing vocal channeling in the way I do it, or automatic writing or something like that, very often it's easier to do if you actually have people asking questions who really, really need to know the answers, because it gets the channel out of the way and allows the information to simply come through you to them in much the same way that electricity seeks a ground. It comes through you and grounds itself in the person asking the question. So having people ask questions of a channel is one strong way to allow the channel to practice just being an open conduit and letting that information through. When you yourself are asking for the information for yourself and it's coming to you, yes, you can certainly download it, but a lot of times it's confusing because then you're sitting there thinking about it, and it's sort of milling around in your own mind instead of letting you simply get out of the way to be of service to someone else who is looking to hear that information. So in my experience, having people actually ask questions is one good way to really practice getting out of the way and letting that information find them through you.
That's beautiful. And I think when I share with people too, one of the things that I've shared with them is the trust in oneself, because I
Mhm.
find a lot of people bumping into that hurdle where they're like, I'm receiving something. I don't know if it's just inner talk or if it's this
Right.
or if it's that.
That's
Uh,
okay. That's okay. I mean, that's the other side of it, is you kind of have to be okay with not getting anything. You have to be okay with not understanding whether what you're getting is accurate. You have to be okay with looking silly, sounding silly. You really have to get your ego out of the way and your doubt and worry out of the way, because it's going to evolve as it's going to evolve. And you simply have to practice, like anything, to get better at it. So you have to just really let go of all of those worries and concerns at the beginning and just let it through and just see what happens. Even if nothing comes through, then that's what's happening right now. That's okay.
I love that, and that's beautiful thought to live by, energy to live by. I also want to let everybody know, any of you guys who are just tuning in, we are going to be taking questions in the last 20 to 30 minutes. So in about 20 to 25 minutes, let's shift gears, Daryl. Me
Sure.
and you could talk about channeling all day long. We both live, breathe, and eat that. So what you've done in your personal life, you've taken the message behind Bashar, your experience with Bashar, and you did a film with that through
Mhm.
your own company. You produced it, you did everything. You did a documentary. Um, and that was kind of your personal passion. And I know that filmmaking has been one of your huge passions. What are some of your other passions that are happening these days? Do you have anything else besides the filmmaking that you do when you're not channeling?
Sure. I mean, I've written books. I have two books out now in a sci-fi series called The Shards of a Shattered Mirror, and I'm working on the third book slowly. But what I'm involved in at the moment is we're kind of moving away from standard filmmaking, and we're going into doing escape rooms. And for people that don't know what an escape room is, it's a new form of entertainment, relatively new form of entertainment since about 2012. And it is putting people into an actual physical environment that is thematic. Like you could be looking for lost treasure in an Egyptian tomb. You could be traveling through time to solve a problem. But it's a series of puzzles and hints and clues that you must solve within a certain amount of time to quote unquote escape from the room. Now, a lot of escape rooms are just becoming much more interactive. It's not really about necessarily escaping anymore. but it's about going on an adventure in an environment that's created for you to experience the reality of that adventure in a new and unique way. And it's very good for problem solving. It's very good for team building. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of escape rooms now around the world. I think, it started with one in 2012, and now there's at least 5,000 globally, and there's over 2,000 in the United States alone, and well over 40 in Los Angeles, where I live. So it's an emerging entertainment field that actually is a logical extension of filmmaking, because you're telling a story, you're involving people in the story, but it's like they're in the movie. You're building sets that seem very realistic and allowing people to really experience having an adventure in an hour or 90 minutes that they can't have anywhere else.
That's so wild. I've seen those. I've always wanted to do it. Me and Kalina, we were going to go to one before she got pregnant with the baby Lilith, and that's so exciting. So you're going to be involved in doing one? Or are you going to open up your own place?
Yes, we are developing one now. We have actually just found a building. We've just made a proposal to the landlord to be able to go in there. So we're waiting for his response. But yeah, it's a wonderful, exciting kind of business to get into. Very creative, and also as a business, relatively lucrative. If you really make an escape room with any degree of capacity at all, they usually actually do very well. So it's very exciting next step for us. We will be posting our progress on my website, which is darrylanka.com, as we go through this process. And we hope that we will be able to open in Los Angeles with our first escape room experience sometime in the fall.
That is wild. That is great. When we're in LA, we'll definitely have to come check that out. What? Why the escape room though? I know you said the translation between it, and believe me, I can tell by the way you started working on the Star Wars. I've seen the sets that you built. I've seen all the material that you've had, but it'll be an amazing one. But why escape room? What got you and Erica into that?
Well, again, the idea is I love environments, I love experiences, and I love stories. But what better than to not just tell someone a story, but have them live the story? It really changes people. It's very exciting what happens to people when they go through a thing, like a detective or on an adventure where they have clues and they have to solve puzzles, and they discover things, and they have a whole series of aha moments with their friends, and it's really transformative in a very fun way. And I've always been about that's in a sense really why I got into movies. It's all about creating stories that allow people to sort of go to another reality and have a moment where they are in a different place, and the more real you can make that for them, then the changes they go through are also more permanent and more real. I think there was a study done some time ago by a special effects person named Douglas Trumbull when he was experimenting with ShowScan, which was a 60 frame a second version of film. And they discovered that when the brain perceives something as real, it actually retains 60% more information. So it's a very powerful kind of entertainment form that allows people to really learn different skills, to find out what they're good at, to really learn how to take the experiences in the escape room and use that, apply them to problem solving in their lives, and to team build and form associations and connections with their friends that are even deeper. So I'm just very excited about this kind of an entertainment venue, and I can't wait to see what it does for people when they go through it.
That it's total immersion, that immersion aspect
Absolutely.
of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. A lot of people I've seen play video games for the same reason. It's an
Mhm.
immersion. It's a take into that reality. But I've also played video games, and I've met people on video games that I've become good friends with. So
Right.
there really is something about bonding over overcoming adversity, whether it's true adversity and your life is on the line, or whether it's in a game or in an escape room.
Yep.
There's a bond there that really is special.
It is. It is. It's a challenge, and overcoming challenges together does create a family. So, that's one of the great things about it. Again, it's like being in the video game, not just playing one, but being in it, being the character, being the hero of that video game.
Yeah, that's it. That it's the video game without electronic form to do, so you can literally physically go and spend time with your friends and family. Something I think our collective has been kind of missing out on with technology is beautiful and great and it expands us all, but it also can be that part that takes you away from it. And this is a way to do that with rebuilding. That's amazing. So what's the funnest puzzle that you've done so far? Because I imagine if you're going to create a business like this, you've had to have gone to many of these before.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we're still going, we're still learning. I think one of the nicest ones was kind of an Egyptian tomb. It was a very well done set. It had some interesting surprises in it, some interesting puzzles and challenges. I mean, the one of the reasons you go with a team is because everyone has different skills, and because there are many different types of puzzles in an escape room, that one puzzle may not necessarily be your strengths or talent, but they may be the strengths and talent of another person, because some of them may be based on visual cues, some of them may be based on auditory cues, some of them may be based around the idea of feelings. There's just a lot of ways to create puzzles that allows everyone to express their skills. And for those that are sort of willing to expand, it really does help you think outside the box. And again, that's a very strong tool for problem solving in the real world, is to look at things from a different perspective. So when you go through an escape room, it's like getting a crash course in going through 20 different perspectives of how to solve a puzzle that can be applied out in the real world, and go, what are 20 different ways I can look at this? Am I looking at it the right way? Is this something that I can look at from a completely new point of view and understand it from a new perspective that will help me face this challenge? So it's a very good practice for problem solving in that sense too.
Yeah, so me and Colleen have talked about this before, that if we've ever gone, and we've seen a few on TV and whatnot, and she has dyscalculia, which means math is a foreign language to her. So if we go in there, she's like, if it's up to me, to solve 3 + 3, we're going to be locked in there forever. And I'm like,
That's
well,
a
if I have to read anything with fancy words, we'd be
Yeah,
locked in. So the strengths of each other play. That makes a lot of sense. That's amazing.
yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you guys are gonna have that. And you said for people who are interested in coming into that or checking that out, once you do have that set up, you're going to be announcing all of the updates on your website, darrylanka.com.
Yes, correct. Now, eventually, we will actually have a website for the escape room itself. The company is called Boggled, Boggled, because we do mind-boggling adventures. So we will eventually have a Boggled website. But for now, any updates until it's really close to up and running will be at darrylanka.com, DARRYLANKA.com.
And we've already got that in the description. We'll make sure to put the name Boggled in there too, so that people can keep their eyes on that.
Okay.
Do you know what part of California or LA County that's going to be in?
Yes, if we get the building that we think we're going to get, it'll be in the area called Calabasas in the West San Fernando Valley.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, Kalina's been there. She lived, as you know, she lived in LA County for a long time. So that's beautiful. Well, that's wonderful, guys. We'll make sure to keep you guys updated on that too as we go through. Back to your passions as a human too, with filmmaking. I know you've translated that into this new project, but can you tell us a little bit? Some of the people I'm sure have not got to see your documentary yet. One of the best things that I saw in the documentary that was good for me as a channeler was showing the validity of the science behind it. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the science that you had to go through to show scientifically that channeling is a thing?
Yeah, well, I did a channeling with my head wired to a brainwave machine, the EEG machine, so that we could see what changes are going on in the brain, if any, while I'm actually in the channeling state. And the differences we discovered are profound. Now, we used a professional for this who does this kind of work. So we know that, her calibrations and everything, as you can see in the film, were done correctly. And one of the basic differences is that certain things accelerate in the brain and certain things turn off in the brain, which was very interesting. For one thing, there's a certain center in the brain that is responsible for processing my personality. And when I'm channeling and Bashar is coming through, that part of the brain is switched off. So if the part of my brain that processes my personality is switched off, the logical question is, who's talking? So that was one very surprising thing. Another very surprising thing was there's this thing called a set point. And a set point is something that develops relatively early in life. And it's the rate at which your brain processes information. And let's just say, for example, it's 10 cycles per second or something along that line. It processes reality. It absorbs information at 10 cycles per second. Now, that set point, according to our understanding in science, is not supposed to really significantly change over the course of your lifetime, unless you go through some sort of traumatic event or suffer some sort of brain damage or something like that. But when I'm channeling, the surprise was that the set point changes immediately, which is not supposed to be possible. And it rose by several points. And not only did it rise within seconds of channeling, the interesting thing was it went up when Bashar is talking, but it went up even higher when Bashar was listening to people ask their questions.
Wow.
Which means that the attention span he's giving to a person who's asking a question is profound, and that he can really sense not only what they're asking, but the reasons they're asking it, the feelings they're having when they're asking it. He listens to a degree that's almost in another dimension. Another thing we found is that the processing speed of the brain speeds up greatly. So it's processing information, making connections, synthesizing information, making more associations. See, the thing about the channeling state I'm in is it's an old term that we say it's a trance channeling. It's not a trance. It's a state of heightened connectivity and awareness, but just altered in a different way. So we discovered many of these things and more things. If people want to go and see First Contact, the documentary itself, they can either find it at our distributor site, which is Indie Rights Movies, which I believe is actually you can get through your streaming service on TV, or they can probably find it on Amazon, or they can even go to Bashar's website, bashar.org, bashar.org, and there's a page there where they can connect and find it for download and for streaming.
Yeah, it was very amazing. Me and Kalina had the opportunity to watch it. We actually signed up for the live preview of it, but we couldn't make it to New York because we had to take my son back early that weekend. So we ended up getting to watch it later, but it was a wonderful documentary, a lot of validity to the science behind channeling, because that lies the most big hurdle for those who say, maybe it's possible, but I can't get myself there.
I mean, that's one of the things we really wanted to do with the documentary, was simply demystify the whole concept of channeling. Because like I said, everyone channels. Anytime you're doing what you love to do and you're really focused on it, and like you don't even pay attention, it feels like 15 minutes has gone by, you look up and it's been 3 hours, you are in a channeling state. So this is a natural state we all get into. And we wanted to take the woo-woo factor out of it and say, look, this is something everyone does. It just depends on what you choose to do with it that determines how it comes through you.
That's wonderful. Sorry, I forgot to unclick my mute button. That's a beautiful thing. And I think, too, a lot of people found a lot more than just that, too. Some people weren't familiar with your stories. They didn't necessarily hear interviews with you or hear you talk. And we talked about that before coming on, too, about how you told your story 100 times, so I wasn't going to put you through that.
Thank you.
But you're welcome.
They can hear the whole thing in the documentary.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful. Actually, I heard things on the documentary I'd never heard anywhere else from your story too, which was personally exciting for me and Kalina too.
Okay.
I also this show I've wanted since I've come back and since I've started. I want to go beyond just the basic chats that I have with people about metaphysics. Fortunately, you're a person who knows a lot about metaphysics, and we can all learn a lot from that. But we also want to know the person behind, and we got to find out some things about you that we didn't know, the
Okay.
excitements of the new projects. So let's do a question answer. We'll call it a lightning round, even though you don't have to answer quickly. But I just want to dive into some personal
Sure.
questions that I doubt you've ever been asked.
Oh, okay. That'll be good. Let's do it.
First of all, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
What's your favorite food?
Sushi. Or
Uh,
any Japanese food.
really, that's beautiful. What's your favorite music genre?
Oh, I have several. I don't know that I have a favorite genre. I'm very eclectic in my musical choices. So it just depends on the piece.
And it depends on the mood, probably too.
Yeah.
So in that way, you don't have a favorite band or favorite song?
No, I have several. It just, yeah, it really depends.
Yeah, I'm much simpler that way. I love lots of genres, lots of types. But if anyone's like, "Hey, what's your favorite band?" Ween, and everybody knows that because it's the oddest band around. But it fits my personality well.
Okay.
Um, what's your favorite movie?
Oh, God. I get this question a lot too. And again, I always swear I'm going to sit down and make a list. But definitely, I would have to say either, way at the top is The Dead Zone. Are you familiar with that?
I am not.
With Christopher Walken. It's one of his earliest films. Watch The Dead Zone. You'll see what I mean. Another favorite movie of mine is Road to Perdition with Tom Hanks. I think it's a really well-made movie. I really love it for its cinematic qualities and storytelling. Again, there are just so many. But check out The Dead Zone. I think you're going to find it really fascinating, especially at this time in our culture.
I will definitely do that. What about, have you ever seen the movie What Dreams May Come?
Oh, yeah. In fact, actually, a good friend of mine, Barnett Bain, was the person who made that movie.
See, that makes sense. When reading through the IMDb, my friend William told me that one of the places where they got information about the afterlife was the Seth material as well.
Mm-hmm.
That the person did a deep dive into that, and if they know you, then I'm sure they had opportunity to listen to a lot of Bashar too. So that's interesting. I always say that's my favorite movie when it comes to the afterlife and how it's kind of set up and how it works. But you also did a movie about afterlife too. What was the name of that?
Dearly Departed. And it's the conceit we did is we did it like a documentary, as if we took a camera into the afterlife and interviewed the spirits of the dead to get their take on life after death.
I've seen the trailer for that, but I have not watched the movie yet. I still will do that. I'm gonna have to find it and watch it. It'll be
Yeah,
great.
again, Indie Rights Movies is the distributor for that, for First Contact, and for our most recent film, which is a small sci-fi film called Alienated.
Oh, that was a wonderful. Me and Kalina watched that, and it was so wonderfully put together. It was very lighthearted, very serious, very connected to the ET contact connection. So that was a good movie too. If you guys haven't seen that one, someone in the chat said Cloud Atlas for reincarnation. Have you seen that one before?
Yes, I have. That's an excellent depiction. Also, it's really interestingly done.
Yeah, I like that one as well. What was your favorite car you ever owned?
The one I own now, which is a Toyota Yaris hatchback.
Oh, nice. The hatchbacks are
It's a
beautiful.
wonderful little car. Yeah, it just goes and goes and goes. And it gets really great mileage.
What's the favorite place, location that you've ever been in the world, whether vacation or doing channeling, just to observe and to look at the outer beauty?
Well, again, probably I'd have to say Japan. I've been there 18 times, and I really love the culture, identify with the culture very strongly.
Are you aware of any past lives that you've had there?
I think so. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, that's something that's very interesting. All right, and I'm going to try to think of one more that maybe nobody has asked you before we start taking questions from that. I think we've covered a lot, but what is your earliest childhood memory?
Oh my God. That actually is what would normally pass for a past life memory. Uh, I remember from early childhood running up a hill through a field of green grass and yellow flowers, heading for what I can only assume, or what I realized later in life, was one of the Alps. And there is a European train coming around the curve, and it's a European train whistle. And I have always known, even as a young child, what a Luger gun felt like in my hand.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a German World War II gun, if I'm correct.
Exactly. So I think my best take on the feeling of it is probably being in the underground resistance and getting shot. And that's where I died.
Wow, that's a powerful first memory to have, especially in the past life. I've only had one past life recall. It was when I first started connecting with meditation, and I was sitting watching a documentary show on the History Channel, and they said, when we get back from the commercial, we're going to talk about the thing that was smaller than the loaf of bread that killed most of Europe. And instantly, I was like, oh yeah, the plague.
Yeah.
And then instantly I'm to this place, and it was very brutal, graphic memory. But I remember coming home from the Crusades, and my whole village was sick. People were dead, and then I ran back to my home to check on my family, and there was a body pile burning. It was really intense, the smell, the feel. That really changed my perspective on reincarnation, because I had no clue if it was real before that or not. I hadn't connected with Treb at that point.
Yeah.
So it was a very, very big one too. All right, guys, we are going to take. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, the earliest memory from this life is something that we actually show in the documentary, and that's something that actually does connect to Bashar. But I'll let that stand.
That's beautiful. Well, that's beautiful, guys. We are going to take questions now. Any question that you guys have about Darryl's experiences, his time with Bashar, but obviously he's not going to be channeling tonight, guys. So anything that you want to ask that's in those lines, we'll take those questions in. We'll take our first question here. Who's your favorite living person, if you can manage that one?
My favorite living person. That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Wow. Favorite living person.
Yeah, maybe we should narrow that down to maybe a favorite living person that you appreciate as far as a global figure or a famous person. Because if you have a favorite person, I'm imagining it's Erica, and then beyond that, you could go into a million different fields, right?
Yeah, no, I assumed it was something beyond my wife, who is my favorite living person.
Yeah, of course.
But wow, it's interesting because everyone I come up with is no longer living. I'm going to just have to pass on this.
All right, pass it is. One question I think here is very important for our community, something a lot of people have problems with. How do you open your heart center? That's really big thing that a lot of people have a tough time with.
Well, the channeling certainly helps with that. Following your passion, as Bashar suggests, certainly helps with that. Being of service to others really helps with that. So remember, the idea of channeling is to be of service, or being of service to anyone in any way really starts to create a strong connection from your heart to theirs, understanding different people's pathways, understanding what they're going through, being empathic and empathetic to their situation, and understanding that everyone has a different path. I think just really taking that to heart, that everyone is on a different path, but they're all heading to the same place. We're all aspects of creation, and we're all going through our own experiences. Being aware of that, being open to that, and really doing what you can to be of assistance and be of help and be of service to people, I think is one of the biggest ways to open your heart center.
Oh, agreed so much. Thank you for that. The next question we have, do you channel other guides who you work with but don't present publicly?
There have been a few other entities that have come through on rare occasions. For the most part, they actually do come through publicly in some of the channeling events that we do, because there's a reason for them to deliver a particular perspective or message to the people at that event. So yes, now and then other ETs and other kinds of beings have come through, but it's relatively rare for me.
All right, that's beautiful. Thank you for that. Someone also is asking, hi, Darryl, have you ever experienced being on a ship?
In what I would call my dream lucid state, yes, not physically, but I have had 4 dreams with Bashar that I know are not just normal dreams, because we're just having a conversation all through the entire thing, and it's just like talking to someone. And in one of them, I was actually on board his craft. I got to see what the inside of it looked like. They're very plain, they're very simple. And one of the most fascinating things about it was when I looked over, Bashar was standing in front of me, and there was another being at, I guess, what you would call the control console of the ship. But I couldn't see any controls. And they explained to me telepathically that, well, the pilot is telepathically connected to the ship, and therefore only the pilot can see the controls. So I thought that was kind of cool. So in that lucid dream encounter, yes, but not physically, as far as I know.
Beautiful. And I'm looking for the question that I had caught my eye here a second ago, and I'll put it up on the screen here in a second. But when I find it, the question, right here. How much influence did Jane Roberts and Seth have on your personal spiritual evolution?
Well, I think quite a bit, considering that because I was familiar with them, is one of the reasons I was so fascinated to go into the class to find out, what this person was doing to teach somebody channeling. So I would say they had a profound effect on my choices and decisions in life.
Wonderful. Thank you for that too. And there's a question here from our good friend Kyler, who says, Darryl, what are foods that are best to eat at the moment?
Well, that's different for everyone. I can't really give you a generalization on that. I'd say whatever your body feels is necessary, whatever vibration feels right to you. The more clear we make ourselves, the more clear it will be as to what you're really attracted to eat, what is best for you personally. Certainly for many people, a lighter diet seems to be generally best. But again, I can't necessarily say that that's true for everyone, because everyone is on a different path and has different needs in their body for what they may need at that particular moment. But I do think we're generally evolving toward a lighter diet.
Yeah, and I know that both you and Bashar have talked about it. It is personal preference. A lot of people would say, you should only eat veggies, or you shouldn't eat meat. Other people say you should only eat meat, no veggies. And it really is a personal thing. If we're individual consciousness living in an individual body, we have to have an individual intake on how we receive energy.
Yeah,
So that makes sense.
From Bashar's perspective, it's really about doing it in the most respectful, natural sort of way of approach to whatever it is. And the one thing that he said that was kind of surprising was, when you're ingesting nature, nature is ingesting you. So it's kind of like an exchange is going on, and as long as it's done out of respect and service, and in a natural way as much as possible, as can be done in these days, then it's really whatever it is you truly need, as long as it's not being chosen out of anxiety or out of a sense of lack or anything like that. You'll gravitate naturally to what it is that actually works best for you.
Yeah, that's the thing too. The fear in choices does create a lot of people to go into a diet that works well for others but doesn't for them too. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now this question, I'm not sure if you'll have an answer for. I don't know if Bashar has talked about it, or if you have any knowledge of this specifically, but why is Earth buzzing or vibrating sometimes lately? This person, I guess, is experiencing that. Is it good? Is it bad?
Yeah, Bashar has discussed this. From his perspective, it's a side effect of what he calls the splitting prism. In other words, there are a multitude of parallel versions of Earth that coexist simultaneously, all right here and right now. They're separated by a difference in frequency. And as we shift our own consciousness, we are actually, according to him, shifting through different versions of Earth billions of times per second. Time is a side effect of that shift. But I think the buzzing and the vibrating that's going on is our growing awareness of the frequencies that represent the different realities that we're shifting through. Because as we expand our consciousness, our senses become more acute to different kinds of energies that have been around us all the time, but that we have been unaware of. So that may not be the only answer, but that's one that I know that Bashar has talked about, is that kind of vibration is a side effect of our awareness that we are shifting through different parallel realities, and the growing awareness makes it seem as if we're accelerating. So the vibration is the, shall we say, the harmonic difference between the old and the new reality.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's very interesting. I have another question. I'm sure you, with your years with Bashar, you might have some insight on. Question: in Bashar's channeled material, there's a lot of references to Christianity and Egyptian cultures, but what has he said about the Hindu cultures and entities such as Ganesha, Shiva, Human, Kali, and the countless forms of other feminine deities?
Yeah, he's talked about this. He's touched on it. I mean, there's two different levels, or maybe more than two different levels to this. He said, on one level, these are archetypal consciousnesses that exist in general for humanity. There's another layer of consciousness to our collective consciousness that is representative of different cultures on the planet that form archetypal entities that we interact with, because that's more representative of how we understand our culture, how we understand reality. At the same time, he said some of these beings are actually memories of earlier ET contact that have simply gone into legend and gone into myth, both male and female, and other things as well. So it just sort of depends on exactly what we're dealing with at any given moment as to whether it's the archetypal residue of that energy, whether it's a memory of an entity that really was physical on our planet at one time, and it may be several other things. So, I mean, that's a big subject, and he's talked about it a little bit more than we have time to talk about it here, but that's an overview that I think of what he has said.
Beautiful. Thank you for taking all these questions too. We got one from John Creek. It says, I've been working with the Yael quite a bit. Can Darryl speak to his understanding of them, their role in contact, and them working with us, and how are they different from the work with the Sasani?
Yeah, as far as Bashar said, the Yael are the ones that are, shall we say, harboring the hybrid children that will be coming to live among us at some point. So they are kind of the overseers or the caretakers of the hybrid children on the ships. They're helping them to learn to acclimate to Earth culture. And they will be, as far as I understand it, the ones who will be delivering the hybrid children to live in different enclaves or sequestered areas on the planet to help them get used to our culture as we get used to them. So as far as I understand it from what Bashar said, that's their specific overall function as one of the hybrid races. The Sasani are more, 50-50, what we would call human and gray, whereas the Yael are a little bit more toward the human, and the hybrid children are, a little bit more toward the human, so they're not quite so standoutish as the Sasani might be. But the Sasani are more about being social engineers, first contact specialists, and kind of things like that, and helping us in this way with information, whereas the Yael are more hands-on. Many of the UFOs we may see around us may be Yael ships. Things like the Tic Tacs that have been recently supported, Bashar has said, are hybrid ships, so which the Yael may be involved in, getting us used to seeing them, getting us used to the idea that they're going to interact with us at some point, and has said that they would probably be the first hybrid species we would interact with, not meaning that they're necessarily the first ETs we would interact with when open contact occurs, but that the Yael and the hybrid children will probably be the first hybrid species we form a contact with when open contact occurs.
Beautiful. The next question that we've got, what are some of the best methods for healing physical ailments in the body?
Well, I mean, again, that's probably different for everyone. I know that Bashar shies away from doing health information because it's not really allowed by our culture, our medical profession, and he respects that until we change our laws. But in general, he has indicated that everything starts in energy. Everything starts with resonance and frequencies of energy, and that our medicine is probably heading in that direction, where we start to realize that when we align with certain frequencies that are representative of a healed state, that our body will naturally go back into the healed state. One thing he has mentioned is because our world is polluted, our air is polluted, our water is polluted, our food is polluted with toxins, that it's very healthy to get the toxins, to purge them from our systems. That goes beyond just fasting. It means you actually have to ingest things that actually get the toxins out of the cells. And he's saying when you get the toxins out of the cells, then the cells are capable of absorbing the nutrients that you do manage to put into your body. And from that point forward, your body is probably capable of healing itself from almost any ailment. But again, it depends on the person's path and the reason for the disease, which a lot of times starts in the energy state, in the belief systems, in what the person believes is true about themselves. As he says, look at the word itself, dis-ease. So it's about finding that center, going back into your natural state, and allowing the body to take care of whatever it needs to take care of. And that sometimes involves really dealing with the toxic belief systems within us first. But it can help to also detoxify the physical system to make it easier for the body to heal itself that way too.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's in alignment with everything I understood too, that most elements are something lesson to be learned or energetic resistance
Right.
that we hold as humans with beliefs. Beautiful. Thank you for that. We just got a few more. We've got a ton more questions, but I'm only going to ask you a couple more.
Sure.
I know we're getting closer to that 90-minute mark. Practice preferred frequency light. Our friend Tasha asked, does Darryl astral travel to Bashar's planet?
Well, like I said, I know in dream states, I've been out of body and in Bashar's ship. I do not have a recollection of going to his planet. It doesn't mean I don't, but I really can't answer that because I really don't have any recollection of doing so.
Okay, beautiful. Understood. A couple more. I'm trying to pull out the ones that catch my eye as quick as I can. Okay, here's a good one. Do they have hello Darryl, do they have a leaderboard for people in the civilization of Bashar that tells them who has the most excitement and awareness?
You're talking about if Bashar can tell what energies people have. I'm sure they can. And I'm sure they're very aware of those that are, you know, living their lives of passion in their truest possible sense. I think it probably shows up to them just like a light, So I'm pretty sure, I don't know if they literally have a leaderboard, but I'm pretty sure that they are aware when people are raising their vibrations, because those are the ones that are probably most likely to be involved in open contact when that occurs.
All right, that's beautiful. Thank you for that. And we'll go with the last question for the night. Let's see. Okay, here's one that I commonly come across through my own channeling and whatnot. Question: Are destiny predestined? Lately, I've been learning a lot on this topic.
Yeah. Bashar says that this operates on two different levels. He refers to it as the theme you chose to explore for this life. In other words, you are a unique person. You are the theme of this life, and whatever goes along with that theme in terms of what you're here to learn or experience, in a sense, could be said to be your destiny. In other words, this was a free will choice you made from spirit. So you will go through that theme. That's your destiny. But you have the free will in physical reality to go through it however you really choose to go through it. So he kind of uses the analogy of a hallway. So you have chosen to go down a certain hallway. So that's your destiny. You will not deviate from going down that hallway, because that's what your life is about, as you, as this unique personality. But you can run down the hall, you can walk down the hall, you can crawl down the hall, you can go forwards, you can go backwards, side to side, upside down, happy, sad, look in every doorway along the way, or ignore them all. How you go down the hallway is up to your free will as a physical being, but you have given yourself the destiny of being this person with this theme of exploration, for whatever that means to your soul. And that is your self-chosen destiny.
That's
Not
beautiful.
everything is absolutely fixed. There's some fluidity in the things you choose. Like, for example, some people have been known to literally choose the minute that they die. There's a very famous example of Cayce, who said to his friend, "I'm going to die at 10:29 tomorrow morning," and he did. So, that's rare. Most people would say, all right, when I'm done with this life, anything within a few months, or anything that comes along, that would take me out quickly or something like that, will just be fine with me. So there is some looseness to it depending on what the theme is. But in general, there is the destiny that you've chosen from spirit, and the free will that you get to exercise in the experience itself.
That's beautifully put. And I know it's a very complex idea too for a lot of people, the free will versus destiny.
Right, but they work hand in hand. It's not really a free will versus destiny. It's destiny and free will. And remember that the destiny is chosen from the free will of the spirit.
And that's the beautiful thing. It's still, I think, hard, just like the topic of nonlinear time or fluid time, or dimensional energy.
Right, because when we were talking about reincarnation, I always have to remember Bashar is saying all these things exist at the same time. All these lives exist simultaneously. It's not that, it's more that you're having an energetic connection with someone else who exists at the same time you do. You are not that person, nor were you that person. You're this person, and that person is that person, and you both exist simultaneously in what we perceive to be different time frames.
Yeah, and that's the part. Even though people understand that to a degree, it's hard for them to practice because our experience is so far removed from feeling and experiencing that way. And a lot of time we just have to remember the soul's experience as we experience, and then kind of guide through that part of us that needs the experience too.
Yeah, but they're getting more practice with being able to experience it, because there are things that are happening in the expansion of consciousness, like more synchronicity, more deja vu, more things. Not always is this the case, but there are more instances of what people call the Mandela effect, where people start remembering different histories that are both real. So we are starting to sense more leakage from parallel realities that exist with ours at the same time. So I think that will increase as we move forward in our evolution and expand our consciousness. And then we will be able to actually be able to hold the idea of multiple realities in our consciousness at the same time, in the same way that Bashar civilization does now.
Well, that's beautiful, and all of these topics are something that, when we get into it, your exposure to Bashar plus your own ability to connect information really have a great way of being able to express that and share it in a digestible way, which I find is one of the harder things to do when you're talking about topics of this depth. And
it's one of the reasons. Yeah, it's one of the reasons I'm going to be starting to teach, and I have started teaching myself classes about all this stuff, because when Bashar does a public event, you only get a few minutes to talk about a subject. But by me doing classes, people can really actually sit down and they can dive in, and we can explore these concepts for hours until people really let it sink in and they get it and make it their own. So that's another thing I'm excited to do in the future.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was going to say, is to have a guest with your understanding is wonderful. And I want to thank you on behalf of everybody for coming in today and talking about these.
Oh, my pleasure.
We could talk for hours, I know. First of all, I want to thank all of you guys who donated. I'm flashing your names up on the screen of the donations that you gave. Appreciate donations. We really do appreciate it and love you guys for doing that. Thank you so much. Darryl, when people want to come and listen to your classes where you get to talk about this extensively, when people want to check out all the information for the escape rooms and everything, DarrylAnka.com, is there any other place where they can catch what you're doing, or how is there any other social media that you kind of use to share that?
For anything that has to do with Bashar information or the classes that I will be teaching, they can go to bashar.org. We do once a month Zoom events, and they can find out what's coming up on bashar.org. Anything they want to know about what I do in my own personal life, like the escape room or books, they can go to darrylanka.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here tonight, brother. As always, it's a great chance to chat with you and catch up with you about life and about all the great things that are happening too. I really, really appreciate it. And if any of your donations didn't get, I feel like I missed one, but I'm not sure if any of them didn't get flashed up on the screen. Appreciate and love. I appreciate it, Darryl. Thank you for coming here tonight. Thank you for spending your time here. I know you're a busy guy.
That's all right.
Thank you. Please send our love to Erica too, and to you. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And thank all of you for coming in, asking your questions, being a part of the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. We are going to be here every week, Wednesday evening, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Bring your questions, and all the guests that we have, you can ask them. You can check out all of our shows. Will be here on the ET Whisper YouTube channel. You can go to our Facebook for the Enlightenment Evolution Hour and Network, and subscribe to the Enlightenment Evolution Network YouTube channel, because we're going to upload there too. And if you want to hang out with us, ET Whisper time, go to Discord. That's where we're all hanging out. Thank you guys so much. Thanks again, Darryl. Appreciate your time, energy.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Kalina. Really appreciate you having this outlet to share this information with everybody.
Oh, it is my great pleasure. And hopefully one day we'll get to do this again, brother. I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely.
All right. You have a good night, brother. I appreciate it.
You too. Take care, everyone.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye. All right, guys. Darryl's an amazing guy. He's such a great dude. Thank you for coming in, Darryl. Thank all of you for coming in. Thank you for your donations. Thank you for your support. Thank you for everything, guys. We appreciate it. We love you. We will see you next week on the Enlightenment Evolution Hour with our guest, Jim Charles of Human Colonies, a dear friend of mine, channeler in our community, a really amazing dude. And hopefully you guys can come in and join us for next week. We'd love to have you come back. We'll see you on the Enlightenment Evolution Network. This is Rob Goth here, signing off for the night. Love you all. Thank you all. See you soon.